Hand me my purse, will you, darling? A girl can't read that sort of thing without her lipstick. That was a very bad impression of the very famous dialogue from the very famous movie, delivered by the very famous and lovely Audrey Hepburn. The movie was Breakfast at Tiffany's, and in this scene, Hepburn rolls that tube of lipstick and gracefully applies it in a moving taxi. Thankfully, Hepburn's patronage for that magical color tube that seemed to grant her this reading proficiency came in the 1960s, because 2 centuries earlier, this could have had legal implications. In the 1770s, the British Parliament passed a law condemning lipstick. It stated that women found guilty of seducing men into matrimony by a cosmetic means could be tried for witchcraft. And in Pennsylvania, a marriage could be annulled if the wife used cosmetics during the couple's courtship. Why go so far back? As recent as 2008, authorities in a northern Malaysian city set a directive forbidding Muslim women from wearing bright lipstick and noisy high-heel shoes. It was intended to prevent sexual assaults and illicit sex. And lipstick, of course, was the root of all evil. Hello and welcome to TIL Moment. Our topic for today is the colorful lipstick. Let's get started. In 1952, the then Prime Minister of India had a personal request for the industrialist and chairman of the Tata Sons Group, J.R.D. Tata. This request was an interesting one. It was to manufacture and set up a unit for beauty products in India. This was because the Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, was concerned that Indian women were spending their money and consequently precious foreign exchange on cosmetics coming from outside of India. J.R.D. Tata then went on to set up a company which was named after a famous French opera. The name and the protagonist of the opera were named after the goddess Lakshmi, the Hindu goddess of wealth and beauty. The company was called Lakme, the French word for the goddess Lakshmi, and the first cosmetic company of India. Lakme would go on to meet this demand of Indian women and become one of the most trusted brands in India. And when we talk about cosmetics, for all you women out there, what was the first item you picked up as a teenager, soon after being allowed to purchase makeup? For me, and I believe a majority of us, it would be that shiny lipstick. As Anne Lamott said, joy is the best makeup, but a little lipstick is a close runner-up. But when we consider lipstick and even makeup on the whole, our minds tend to create an impression of it as an item of luxury, vanity, sensuality, and also something cosmetic. But it has had quite a complex journey, and also our association of lipstick with these words is in fact deeply tied with its history. And today we are going to look at these nuances in its history. References to makeup and lip coloring or decoration have been seen across civilizations and across geographies. Let's start closer home. Women in ancient Indus Valley civilization are believed to have used ochre to color their lips. And what is this ochre? Well, plainly put, it is essentially a form of sand or clay. The presence of iron oxide in the sand gives it a color ranging from yellow to orange to red and also to brown. This same ochre was also used by the ancient Egyptians and also the Aboriginal girls in Australia who would paint their lips with red ochre for puberty rituals. From India now, let's travel westwards. The Sumerians, who are believed to be among the oldest civilizations, inhabited the current-day Iraq. It was called Mesopotamia more than 5,000 years back. The queen Shub-Ad of ancient city of Ur of Mesopotamia is said to have used crushed gemstones and white lead to decorate her lips and eyes. And remember, lead is poisonous. But this will not be the last of these weird and dangerous things that we put on our lips. For now, let's continue our journey further westwards. To the west of Mesopotamia lay the ancient Egyptian civilization. The early Egyptians were contemporaries of the Sumerians. Anyway, the ancient Egyptians made a red dye from something called as fucus algin. This is a kind of seaweed. Then they put in some iodine and some bromine mannite, which again is a highly toxic plant-derived chemical and resulted in serious illnesses. The ancient Egyptians were not gender-bound in terms of lipstick. They instead used it to show social status. It was important to always look good for a fashionable Egyptian, man or woman. This is perhaps why we find makeup buried with them in their tombs. Good looks for the afterlife. Let's continue our journey now. We need to travel a little to the north and cross the Mediterranean Sea. Here we would find the ancient Greek. While the Egypt Empire began to decline, Greek culture rose and spread. These ancient Greek were also using a lot of funky things in their lipstick. But unlike their Egyptian friends across the Mediterranean, they restricted the use of lipstick only for prostitutes, at least in the open. In fact, prostitutes appearing in public without coloring their lips and face would be punished. It was thought that they were trying to improperly pose as the other ladies. The later Egyptians, who were contemporaries of these Greeks, perhaps learned about the toxic things that they were using. Perhaps one too many dying or getting sick. And what was their next alternative? At this time, the later Egyptians like Cleopatra crushed a type of insect called carmine to create a color of red to be used on her lips. Ew! Don't ew too early. This carmine, or sometimes also called cochineal, is used even today in several items that we use. A significant part of the carmine pigment produced is still used in the cosmetics industry. It's used for face powders, blushes, hair and skincare products, and also, of course, for lipsticks. These are also used to color pills and ointments by the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, the full list of items that get their color from these insects would include jams, gelatin, juice beverages, non-carbonated soft drinks, baked goods, confections, icing, toppings, and dairy products. Well, Cleopatra for the win. Not just this carmine, but another substance used by Cleopatra and her contemporaries for lipsticks is still being used, and that is fish scales. The scales of fish were used to get a shimmering effect on lips, and this is also still being used in lipsticks today. Now let's go to the last step of our journey westwards in this ancient period. By the time that Greece fell, the Roman Empire was being established, just before we enter the Common Era. In the Roman period, lipstick had returned to high popularity and was not the style of the prostitutes alone. The other folk were no longer regulated with its usage and had in fact returned to the Egyptian way of determining social status with lipstick. So we see both men and women coloring their lips to indicate their social standing. Most wealthy Roman women had designated specially trained makeup and hairstyling slaves, and they were called cosmetae. Empress Poppaea Sabina, the crazy wife of the crazy emperor Nero, had about 100 cosmetae to maintain her looks and keep her lips painted at all times. And in keeping with the spirit of their times, these Romans too used a reddish-purple mercuric plant dye called fucus, which again was a potentially deadly substance. From this westward journey, we will move to the east now. We will return to these Western lands again in the Middle Ages and also the later periods, because after all, the modern day lipstick is going to evolve in these lands. Moving to the east, the Chinese made lipsticks that were made from beeswax to protect the delicate skin of their lips. During the Tang dynasty in the 7th and the 8th century, they are said to have added scented oils to them to make it more enticing. Now let's travel down the Himalayas and go closer home to India. We don't know precisely what time period we are in. One of my fellow travelers tells me it is about 300 years since a man named Jesus set foot on earth. But the other one believes that it would take several hundred years yet for Jesus to be born. Anyway, suffice to say that we are somewhere hundreds of years back. We are in the streets of a town what is now northern India. It is probably where Patna lies today. Although unannounced and uninvited, let's enter the home of one of these townspeople. Let us go inside and take a look at the house. There are lamps lit around the house, and there is a pleasant smell. It smells like incense in here, something like dhoop. Wait, we hear something. There is a man in the next room. He seems to be dabbing his face with a piece of cloth and proceeds to now pick up a small pot container. I smell sandalwood. He is applying this fragrant ointment over his body. Oh, he's picking up a flower garland now. Is he heading for a prayer? Oh well, he wears the garland around his neck. What an elaborate routine the man has. He's now applying something to his eyes and also something to his lips now. It looks red in color and his lips are now a deep crimson. Wait, he has picked up something else now and is rubbing this too over his lips. It looks like wax. He stands in front of a mirror and is admiring himself. After this long and fancy routine, he seems to be finally done. Satisfied with his appearance, he picks up some betel leaves and puts them in his mouth. And oh wait, he's heading in our direction. This is a scene recreated from an ancient Indian text, Kamasutra. The author Vatsyayana here describes the daily ritual of a Nagaraka, the city superintendent. The red dye that our friend the Nagaraka applied on his lips is called alaktaki, a red dye made from lac. Lac is a resin secreted again by an insect. Some of you might be aware of the alta used by Bengali and Odia women in India to color their hands and feet. This alaktaki is the same alta, although current day alta are mostly synthetic dyes. So as we see, the use of lipstick or some form of lip decoration is seen across the different regions of the world in the ancient period. Here we will transition from the ancient period to the common era. For the next part of this history to unravel, we need to trace back our journey westwards. We stopped at the Roman Empire in our earlier westward journey. Now, when the Roman Empire crumbled, Western Europe descended into what we now call as the Dark Ages. Even for the lipstick, this was a dark age. During this period, the fall of the Roman Empire and the growing impact of Christianity had an effect. The breaking up of the Roman Empire broke down the trade routes, which hurt resources and commerce, of which one of them was also the trade of the lip painting dyes. Along with this, the church too frowned upon the usage of makeup, and this would continue into the Middle Ages too. Although some lip painting did occur, this period changed the course of lipstick, and the association of lip color as an evil and as an affront to morality and piety was planted during this time. In England, a woman who wore makeup was seen as an incarnation of Satan, because such alteration of the face gifted to her by the Lord was seen as a challenge to God and his workmanship. The next golden age for lipstick would only come in the Renaissance period in Europe, and the one heralding this golden age would be the Golden Lady, Queen Elizabeth I. The stark white face and the crimson lips of the Queen did a great service to the lipstick. She is believed to have made her own crimson color with a combination of cochineal, gum arabic, egg whites, and fig milk. In fact, it is also believed that Elizabeth or one of her associates invented the lip pencil. This obsession of the Queen was soon passed on to the others, and most court ladies imitated the Queen in wearing bold lip colors. There are multiple theories about what led to this popularity of the lip colors during this period, because we know that in the period prior to this, it was all but considered the devil. One theory is, of course, the Queen's love for it. The other is that this period also coincided with the increase in wealth of England, thanks to the sea trade that they had begun across the world. The most fun theory of these is about its power as a magical substance that could possibly even ward off death. The Queen, in fact, might have had a part to play in this, because she is said to have herself credited lipstick with life-saving powers. And so, when she fell ill, she applied it liberally. By the time of her death, it is said that Elizabeth had on nearly half an inch of lip rouge. And when you say magic in these times, the next course to follow is but of course the church to be up in arms. This belief in the lipstick's magical force provoked the church. Pictures of devils putting lipstick on women appeared often, and women frequently had to address their lipstick use at confession at church. One prominent text declared the use of cosmetics as a mortal sin, unless done, and I quote, to remedy severe disfigurement or so as to be not looked down upon by one's husband. End quote. Over the next years, this popularity and ill repute of the lipstick did a kind of seesaw. For example, while the French ladies wore bold makeup and put down the natural look as only for prostitutes, in England it was the opposite. London prostitutes wore vibrant makeup and the ladies wore almost no makeup. Then came the New West, the Americas. Americans mostly adopted the more liberal attitude of the French towards lipstick, and American women achieved reddened lips by any means imaginable, with the most popular one being the use of Bavarian red liquor. It was to be either rubbed on or drunk to achieve a red lip. Meanwhile, in England, the already fading popularity of the lipstick reached newer depths with the coming of Queen Victoria. She publicly declared makeup to be impolite and as socially unacceptable. It was meant to be used only by prostitutes and actors. Looking pale was the new fashion statement, and also a symbol of purity again. France, however, was charging ahead. Guerlain, one of the oldest cosmetics and skincare house, was set up in Paris in 1828. The Guerlain's lip pomade was made of grapefruit mixed with butter and wax. Soon the US caught on too, and the first department store makeup counter opened at New York's B. Altman's in 1867. The turn of the century also saw a turn in lipstick's historical journey. The 20th century saw lipstick becoming a symbol of femininity and women's emancipation. The women leading the suffragette movement, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Charlotte Perkins Gilman, incorporated its use into the 1912 New York suffragette rally. The taboos placed on lipstick by the social, religious, and even legal authorities were all primarily seen as male-dominated domains. This made it an apt choice as an easy and accessible symbol to demonstrate rebellion. The increasing influence of the movies gave a further push to this popularity of the lipstick. Maximilian Faktorowicz, a Polish-American businessman and beautician working on the film sets, noticed that hot studio lamps caused lip pomade to run. He wanted to create a lip product that would make lips shiny and glossy for films. This gave rise to the modern-day lip gloss, and the company he set up was called Max Factor. But the age-old problem of the materials used to make a lipstick continued. There was no regulation yet to monitor the ingredients that went into a lipstick and the quality of those. And in a great effort to demonstrate their concern about it, the New York's Board of Health were considering a measure. And the measure was banning lipstick out of concern that it might poison the men who kissed women who were wearing it. But the lipstick by then had already crossed several boundaries. With more women joining the workforce, women being photographed wearing a lipstick, magazines talking about it, and even handbags which came with specially designed compartments to fit in a lipstick and other makeup accessories. All the little things that contributed to make it an acceptable item. Famous names of today like Elizabeth Arden and Estee Lauder began selling lipsticks in their salons at this time. By 1915, lipstick was sold in cylindrical metal containers, which had been invented by Maurice Levy. In 1923, the first swivel tube, which we use to this day, was patented by James Bruce Mason Jr. in Nashville, Tennessee. These metal containers would change to plastic ones during the World War II. But this would not be the only challenge to lipstick during this war. A war obviously meant shortage of resources. Petroleum and castor oil, the main ingredients that were needed in making a lipstick, were unavailable during this time. This led to a decline in the manufacturing of lipsticks, and women hoarded their lipsticks. While Hitler is said to have banned the usage of lipstick, the famous story goes that Winston Churchill decided to keep lipsticks in production because he felt it had a positive effect on the morale. From then on, that colored stick has constantly kept changing, defined by the fashion trends, movie stars, and also all the innovations around it. While the 1950s saw the dark red lips being popularized by Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor, in the 1960s it was the white lipsticks. The 70s saw crazy colors of black, light blue, frosted lime green, and silver sparkles. In the 80s, there were mood lipsticks, which changed color based on your skin's pH levels. The 1990s saw lipstick colors going semi-matte, with shades of brown and nudes becoming popular. And to now, where we see all these variations based on your mood, attire, occasion, and of course, the fashion trend of the month, or maybe even of the day. And then, what happens when a pandemic hits us and puts our face behind a mask? What trend do we go for then? Well, the no lipstick look? 2020 was reportedly one of the worst years for beauty industry as a whole. A recent McKinsey report found that in the US, sales of lip makeup fell 15% in the spring of 2020. With masks covering up our faces and most of us working from home, that comes as no surprise. But still, lipsticks are a huge market. The global lipstick market size was valued at $11.5 billion in 2018, and it is expected to grow to close to $19 billion in 2025. Through this entire journey that the lipstick has had, two things have remained constant. The first thing that has remained constant through all these thousands of years are the dangerous things that we choose to put into our lipsticks. Researchers at Berkeley School of Public Health at the University of California tested 32 different types of lipstick and lip gloss that are commonly found in stores. They detected traces of cadmium, chromium, aluminium, manganese, and other metals. The report also indicated that some of these metals reached potentially health hazardous levels. A study by the Food and Drug Administration, that's the FDA in United States, found lead in all of the samples tested. And according to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, there is no safe level of lead for humans. And the second thing that has remained unchanged is, of course, our love for beauty and the things we do in the pursuit of looking good. And so, in the words of Elizabeth Taylor, put on some lipstick and pull yourself together. And for the men, well, if the Egyptian, Roman, and Indian men of the past did it, you can too.